Greetings and welcome back to The Communication Artist. This is my second episode and I'm very excited to share it with you all. Today we're going to be doing the Stealing Thunder strategy applied to Tom Holland's situation. I really wanted to go over the Stealing Thunder strategy specifically because I feel like it is very relevant to the time period that we're in today. And it beats any type of traditional methodology, such as the image restoration theory that we went over last time. I got the opportunity to talk with my manager at work one day, and we kind of spoke on the subject of being a college student, receiving the degree, but also the importance of getting the experience, because they're two completely complex and different subjects. And I actually spoke on my concern in regards to the field that I have and the background that I have in corporate communication. I have this sense of FOMO where I went to school, I have a corporate communications degree, which means I took internal communications, organizational communication, social media marketing, stat, risk and crisis communication. I took all of these classes, but with the rapid pace that everything has been moving at in terms of the media atmosphere, I just have no idea if what I learned then is still relevant to today. So I'm doing my best in terms of keeping up online and taking certification courses on Coursera until I'm ready to get back into the university. And I honestly feel like that's the best and only thing that I can do. And on top of that, making sure that I keep up with any LinkedIn seminars, or I guess in this case, more ideally, webinars. So if anyone who's listening knows anything that's coming up, please share it with me, and hopefully we can bounce back and forth between what we both learn. I'm excited to apply the Stealing Thunder strategy to something that most recently happened in 2022, and I'm actually not seeing any media on it until today around 2024. As I was reading on the Stealing Thunder strategy, Tom Holland's situation popped right into my brain, and I'm just like burning with excitement to share how I decided to put this together. I always like to emphasize, and I'll make sure that I always emphasize, that nobody came up to me and said, hey, we applied the Stealing Thunder strategy to this situation. I want you to analyze it and see how we did it. Like, I'm just guessing that Tom utilized the Stealing Thunder strategy. And today we're going to go over why I'm guessing he used the Stealing Thunder strategy. So in short, the Stealing Thunder strategy is something that you utilize when you want to be upfront about a crisis before it becomes an object of suspicion, scandal, or a twinkle of a rumor. Because usually what comes with a rumor or suspicion is an alternate narrative that's not necessarily the narrative that the subject here has. So for example, what we're going to be going over today is Tom Holland's announcement that he had an alcoholic addiction. Now, if there was suspicion or rumors about it, I bet so many different narratives would have come about, such as how can he be qualified to be Spider-Man? So to quickly go over what the Stealing Thunder strategy is, it's really a goal to get in front of the crowd and admit the crisis before it becomes an object of suspicion or rumor. By stealing thunder, you're able to have both hands on the wheel in terms of navigating the crisis and navigating your own narrative that is placed out into the public. If the public gets their hands on the crisis before the actual subject does, then the opportunity of alternate narratives comes into play, and those alternate narratives might not land with the original narrative that it was. Hence, a rumor. A rumor is usually sensationalized, and it doesn't necessarily align with the truth. And if people are suspicious or they suspect a scandal, it might be overdramatic. It also leaves the room for people to talk presumptuously. And then after that, it becomes a snowball effect. So in order to stop that from happening by stealing the thunder, it helps navigate the crisis. So we're going to go over 5 different steps of the Stealing Thunder strategy. And they're also going to be applied to Tom Holland's announcement that he had an alcohol addiction. And a lot of people who received a little sneak peek on this subject actually said they had no clue that this happened. And I think that's a result of the amazing strategies that Tom Holland's team utilized. So the 5 steps are timing, narrative, channel, and delivery. Timing is crucial because it affects the public reception of the crisis. I can utilize the example of how Tom Holland aligned his announcement with his personal and professional circumstance. Now, I'm not sure how long Tom Holland had the alcohol addiction. However, it is possible that the timing of his announcement aligned with his current professions and roles. The reason I say so is because if Tom Holland had made the announcement around the same time that he was casted as Spider-Man, for example, then this would have made his ability to maintain his role more challenging. The reason being is that Spider-Man isn't just an average character. Spider-Man is a cultural icon, especially for the younger audience. And because Spider-Man is someone to look up to, if Tom Holland had addressed his alcohol addiction around the same time, then it would have been more susceptible to scrutiny, slander, and alternate narratives that probably would have affected his relationship even with Marvel Studios, Disney, and his fans. But rather than timing it that way, he timed it so that it was after Spider-Man No Way Home was already released. So because he waited, it gave him the space to be transparent without jeopardizing his career. If you'd honestly like an example of timing gone wrong, you could take the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. The timing of that case caused them to be removed from major roles that they were playing. Johnny Depp was removed from Fantastic Beasts, and Amber Heard had to fight to maintain her role in Aquaman. Tom Holland's example really showed how timing allowed him to maintain professional integrity while also being honest. Next, we're going to run through the narrative. Many professionals are nervous about doing the Stealing Thunder strategy because they don't want to cry over spilled milk. They don't want to announce a problem where people would have otherwise not have known if nothing was said. From some of their perspective, it's easier to brush it under the rug and handle it privately rather than addressing it publicly. The only challenge with that is acknowledging that in this digital age, it's really hard to keep anything private as a public figure. But perhaps in Tom Holland's case, it wasn't necessarily about privacy, but about transparency and maybe even building a stronger connection with his fans to remind them that he's human too. When he announced that he was addressing his addiction, he didn't announce it in a way that framed it as a problem. Actually, he framed it in a way that it was already solved. The first line in the subject of his alcohol addiction was actually just announcing that he was 5 months sober. So by simply saying that he was 5 months sober really doesn't address the fact that he had an alcohol problem, but just the fact that he hadn't been drinking for 5 months and that he'd been feeling great. So we can see that by jumping in front of a crisis before it becomes publicly known actually allows you to address it as if it's not necessarily a crisis, but just a positive step that enhances self-development. And therefore, and rather than seeing him from a negative perception, it's easier to see him in a positive light that shows somebody who's credible enough to acknowledge their own situation and garner support rather than criticism. I should also mention that anyone who's able to get in front of the picture and frame their own narrative actually becomes a reliable source for media and journalists. The reason why he gains more credibility is because he's the source and subject of the information being shared. If the root of the situation being shared came from a third party rather than Tom Holland himself, then the information landscape would have felt more unreliable, skewed, or simply untrue. But Tom was able to craft a comprehensive and honest message which focused on the positive actions he was taking, and then also made sure to provide enough information later on to prevent the story from being twisted into something damaging. He even positioned himself as someone who simply wanted to share his experience in hopes that it might resonate with others going through similar challenges. So his narrative about being 5 months sober wasn't just about pressuring anyone else, but it was actually offering encouragement, which made it more effective and relatable to the audience. So let's web together the timing and the narrative steps with the third step, channel. The channel choice is vital. Sharing the story through the right channel allows Tom to reach the right target audience, and that's crucial to avoid any third-party sources that are more susceptible to stir up a storm. So I'll go over 2 specific channels that Tom chose. The first channel was the People magazine, and the second channel was Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast. The People's magazine reaches a broad audience, but still those who are specifically engaged and likely to treat it with respect. And the On Purpose podcast mainly focuses on mental health, and that audience is more sympathetic to discussions that circle around personal growth, mental health, and well-being. So by choosing these channels, Tom was able to segment his audience carefully. The People magazine was tailored to fans that followed him closely, and the On Purpose podcast is dedicated to more involved stakeholders and a further audience that's more focused on mental health, self-development, and etc. So this strategized approach allowed Tom to minimize any risk of overexposure and then also ensured that the conversation remains respectful and on topic. And by choosing the channel, it also affects the research that showed that disclosing a crisis would actually lead into less media attention and more positive framing. And that's why there was less media attention in the crowded room of X and Instagram. This really helped Tom maintain his positive public image during this period of time when he was addressing his mental health. And it gave Tom Holland points in his career development because it showed that truthfulness and stakeholder care is paramount to him. So let's unmask the importance of delivery. If Tom hadn't provided enough information, then it would have been more susceptible to false assumptions. For example, we can take emotional recontextualization into consideration. I was able to read a book just for personal development about emotional recontextualization, which is in the description, and I was able to read this exercise that I would like to try on you guys. So let's say I say to you, a man is jumping. I'm not sure where you imagine that man is jumping, whether it's he's jumping on a bed, he's jumping in the street, but you have your own idea of where that man was jumping. But if I add on to the delivery of a man is jumping and say a man is jumping on a dog, now you are probably emotionally triggered and you need to know what's going on. You probably have a perception about what type of person this is. Or maybe you're having a conflict in mind about the reason why he's jumping on the dog. But what if I finally say something entirely different, like a man is jumping for joy at his daughter's graduation? That context provided specifics, it provided emotions like joy, and it even provided a place and why. So delivery is everything. And communicators have really emphasized the importance of being able to define a crisis on their own terms in order to avoid being defined by critics, competitors, or the crowded room of media. And by fully disclosing the bad news, but still being able to incorporate their values, actions, and corrective measures, then even Tom in this case was able to demonstrate his commitment to doing the right thing, even though mistakes occur. Tom was incredibly open about his decision to address his addiction and was even provided the opportunity to share that it was a self-realized choice, that he recognized the problem on his own terms and then chose to take action. So while his narrative was about personal growth and responsibility, by providing context, his delivery explained that his struggles were early on and that he was already taking the steps to address them. The delivery was able to shift the focus from the problem itself to the positive steps that he was taking, and even that approach alone allowed him to underscore deep commitment to his career and responsibilities. This was a greatly authentic and humane approach that ideally resonated with the audience. And by doing this, the public perception is now even more relatable and empathetic than they had already seen it. So to wrap this 15-minute session up, honestly, Tom Holland's approach to delivering the message about his sobriety was a textbook example about how transparency and careful communication can be utilized to manage incredibly sensitive and career-disrupting information. And I was really amazed to see that by being open about his struggles, he was actually able to garner a stronger foundation with his stakeholders. And through all that, I was able to put together that this case study shows that the thoughtful delivery is a key element to the success of every Stealing Thunder strategy, ensuring that the narrative remains under the communicator's control and is still perceived positively. And while making this podcast was challenging, it was really, really fun and a wonderful way to spend my free time, whether it was during my 15-minute breaks at work or right now. It's about an hour and a half after my shift and I'm just in a private office recording. I truly admire everyone who helped me put together this case study, and while I'm doing it, I'm learning prominent names like Shang Li, An-Sofie Claeys, and Stuart Moffat. And each of them wrote research essays in the Stealing Thunder strategy that I strongly relied on. So again, I'm so thankful for the people who came before me that are willing to share their knowledge on the topic, because it makes me feel a strong sense of purpose. So I'll be sure to add the citations to each document I've read. and I hope that it appeals to your curiosity as much as it has for me. Thank you so much for listening to The Communication Artist, aka The Calm Artist. I hope this helps.